Your Humanities Half-hour is brought to you by the Northern Marianas Humanities Council.
Hafidades and Dero, welcome to your Humanities Half-hour. I'm Catherine Perry. Well, here on our final show of 2019, we thought it would be nice to take a look back at some of the highlights from our year and feature a few excerpts from some of the individuals who have shared their stories with us. And we start off with a very inspirational individual, the 2019 CNMI Teacher of the Year, Rochelle Carrion.
What is it really like in Mrs. Carrion's class? And so I just wanted to share with everyone what it is. So before I begin the execution of daily academic lessons, I first share my expectations with my students in order to create a classroom culture of acceptance and unity. They are 1. Come to school on time every day and ready to learn. 2. Turn in assignments on time. 3. Follow class rules and procedures. 4. Apply life skills. And most importantly, 5, love. These expectations are then carried out and built upon throughout the entire school year. These expectations lay the framework of what are required of my students when they become adults. They need to, 1, go to work and ready on time. Go to work ready and on time every day. 2, finish their work. 3, follow the rules and procedures of their work environment. 4, apply life skills. And 5, love who they are and what they do, sharing their talents and abilities with the world, giving back, being productive, and consistently becoming better versions of themselves. I wholeheartedly believe that I cannot teach any curriculum if my students do not grasp my expectations. This is a huge part of my classroom management, and so their daily actions or behaviors, appropriate or inappropriate, become topics for our daily discussions during our housekeeping in our morning routine. The teachable moments, the real connections. I train my students to work hard, and so I share and talk about the infamous fable, the tortoise and the hare. Hard work and perseverance and believing in your abilities will outdo talent any day. My students are taught not to remain complacent, but to challenge themselves beyond, to be even greater. It is not about being smart. It is about choosing to make the right decisions and setting goals for themselves. The topic then leads into the routines of being diligent, motivated, and persevering in carrying out daily, weekly, and year-round goals or routines that my students and I set in the classroom. Goals routines include completing tasks, reading goals, teamwork, the application of life skills, and love. My students are taught to think critically, to have the ability to justify, defend their thinking or reasoning, and to refer back to evidences or provide evidences. They are taught to be efficient. They are also taught to self-reflect, to reflect on themselves, their academic and social performances, and to reflect also on their peers, their classmates' performances in collaborative group work.
This year, we interviewed Tom Voss, who was returning again to the islands to teach meditation to veterans to help promote their healing from post-traumatic stress disorder.
At that time, when I got back, my sister ended up bringing me to a vet center, and I met with a clinical social worker, and then I went into the VA and started meeting with a therapist there, and talking about my experiences. But I didn't think it was helping me. And then it took me years later to figure out it wasn't helping me because I wasn't going for me. I was going for my family. And I was going for my sister because she put so much work into finding a clinical social worker for me. So it dawned on me that it was me. It was, I needed to figure out that I wanted to heal, that I wanted to be better, that I wanted to feel better, that I didn't want to feel this way anymore. And it took me getting to that point to figure out that that's what needed to happen to start the healing process, right? Is you have to make that decision that I want to be better. I want to be a better person. I want to be a better, brother or family member or husband or wife or whatever it is. You have to make that decision for yourself to take the first steps. Otherwise, you're just going through the motions if you're not doing it for yourself.
We also had the opportunity to speak with Gift Johnson, a longtime journalist and contributor here in Micronesia. He shared his insights on what it is to be an editor and a reporter in the islands. Take us back to the day when you first started in journalism here in Micronesia. Nowadays, we've got the internet, can get that message out there in a few seconds. What was the process back in those days?
To get news, particularly from government, because government in these small islands is really the driver of the economy, the driver of pretty much everything. You, as a newspaper reporter, I had to get to know people really well, and it was like you can't just walk. It's very difficult to just walk into a small town and start getting decent stories, because first of all, people want to know, who is this person, what's their, who are they connected to, what's their political affiliation, and I think this is one of the challenges particularly in a small place is. Small islands are very factionalized, and it's mostly based on family relations, like which family are you connected to. But then there's broader political affiliations, and those things affect how people will look at you or deal with you, whether they feel comfortable. And one of the things that we've done, and that my publisher from the day he started the Marshall Islands Journal, was to make it really clear that the newspaper was not taking sides politically. We don't endorse candidates, for example. We cover candidates, we cover campaigns, but we don't endorse. And part of that is just there's no value in it. I mean, let people make up their own minds. And if you have enough information out, people can talk about it, think about it, and make their own minds up. But it just, in a really small place, if you start hammering away, if you're in media, and you hammer away too much on one side, then you just can't talk to people on the other 5 or 6 or 8 sides, because there's never 2 sides in an island. Yeah. There's always many, and you need to be aware of these things.
One of our most intriguing stories of the year was from Uncle Dave Sablan, who shared about his experience during the Japanese administration, and in particular during the Battle of Saipan. You mentioned a date that kind of sticks out in your mind, June 10th, 5 days before the invasion. You were looking up at the sky, I think you said, and you saw what?
Okay. Backtrack just a little bit. On Sunday, it was Sunday, June 10th, Mariano and I were getting ready to go out and beg for some food, because we were living on a farm in those days, and we had very, very little food to eat, or the growth, the vegetables and the fruit that we had were all everybody's food, including the Japanese soldiers. So one day Mariano and I were getting ready to go out and beg for some food from our Japanese military friends, the tank battalion, only to find that as we looked up, there were airplanes fighting at each other, crashing, the bombs were going on, the cannons were exploding all over the place. So Mariano and I decided not to go anywhere anymore.
Good idea.
We better return home, because this appears to be a very serious war, the Battle of Saipan. And so we returned home only to find that everybody is already in the shelter. The Seman family and we were sharing a shelter that was man-made by the Seman family.
Now, what was this shelter like?
Well, we dug deep into the hole, into the ground,
remember, I was about
and then
4
we
years
put
old.
the coconut.
I found myself being attracted to the elderly.
Top,
tomorrow when I'm cool, as well
and
as the
then we covered them with
I tend to
rock
like
and
to follow
sand.
them.
And
I
soil,
follow the bingo. I go pick up ripe mangoes and wash them and get them nice and
we have
fill the
entrance on both
refrigerator
sides.
when I see them
And
pass
so
by.
we
I would
were
run out and give
a
them their
little bit
magazine.
crowded
Say, hey,
in the
done
shelter
this or
because
done
the
that.
Seaman family
Here's a
and
mango,
Maxwell, and we
mango
were
tree. I
eight
picked it up
of us,
myself
10 of
at
us
the
with
farm.
our
They would start
parents.
making me chew bit
But
or not.
we
They
hid
would call me
there
whenever they see me. They go come and
while
chew.
we
So I would
hear
join
all
them.
kinds of bombardment,
I would rather be with them
explosion,
when I was younger.
crashes of
Because
airplanes.
I felt like there was this connection
as
with
we
them.
looked up,
And I learned to
we
speak tomorrow.
saw airplanes that did not
from
bear
a lot
the
of the elderly that I
rising
hung
sun,
around with. They even
the red
corrected
mark.
the way I
So
spoke,
we
the way I spoke
figured
at
that
home.
they
And when I met with
were
them,
the
they would,
American airplanes.
correct my Chamorro
And
language.
those airplanes did a
I was about
round-robin
8.5
bombardment
years old when
of
I
Saipan and
first
Tinian
got interested
daily.
in weaving and
Well, one of the places on Saipan that
medicine.
houses much of our
The cultural
history
part
is
is
the
just like
NMI
when I
Museum
was just
of
growing up,
History
I was
and
just learning it
Culture,
along the way,
which has seen
because I'd be
quite a
hanging around
revival under the leadership
2,
of
3, or
Executive
sometimes
Director
5 elderly
Danny
women, and
Aquino.
then men. I would
We're now
follow them to
enjoying the many benefits of
Gotalaza
having
at,
an open
Oaksan
and
or,
vibrant museum. But
over
it didn't
at
start
Gigan
off that
Point.
way. Danny
I
shares
followed them and
how
learned the fishing methods that they
cooperation
would use,
and support have made the museum
and weaving
what it is
baskets
today.
for fish.
On my
with the
very
elderly.
first day,
My grandfather
I
was a
actually
very good
did the
fisherman,
walk through the
fisherman
museum,
and a
and
farmer. And
I was actually
like
having
said,
second
I hung
thoughts.
around with them all the time.
because that was
I
a tremendous
even
amount of
chosen by my
work that
grandfather
needed to have been
plant all the
done.
root crops, like the
Describe to
tapioca,
us
the yams,
what the state of the
the
museum
potatoes,
was at
because he
that
said
point,
that,
because I don't think a
I
lot of
tend
people
to,
are aware of how
get the roots to be bigger
how
than
much need there
usual.
was. You have
I
good
think
hands.
to
Hands
just
with hands,
simplify the whole
I wouldn't
thing,
say
I would
green
just
hands, they're
say
probably
to
brown hands
everybody
because
to
they're
just
brown.
close their eyes and just keep them shut. And that's basically what I was walking into.
Yeah, I know there was water damage.
Yes, there was
and
waters on the floor.
Structural damage.
There was no lighting.
And this was before any typhoons.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think from what I've gathered was that a lot of the issues were over a extended period of time. So when I did my assessment, I noticed that a lot of the damages were from the trees that were situated along the building, the dog trees.
Okay.
So I had those removed. We had leaks. Well, I wouldn't call them leaks. I would actually call them like running water from the walls, from the rooftop. So we needed to address those issues first, the leaks. My understanding was that there was no water for more than 9 years. Our toilets, for guest toilets, were being used as storage. So it was an overwhelming job. I'm not going to lie to anybody, but we just had to do an assessment and then plan everything. And the main thing was funding. I had to look at the funding issue.
The field of the humanities also includes jurisprudence. And we were fortunate to have attorney Jane Mack join us this year to talk about the process of probate and where families and individuals should start in this process. Getting back then to the process of the probate, what is typically the first step after somebody passes away as far as dealing with the court?
The first step is not to deal with the court. The first step
Okay.
is to have the family come together and have family meetings, kind of talk about what their feelings are, try and sort out everything. And it's best if the family can decide who among them is going to be the point person, who's going to be the organizer, who's going to keep all the information. And that doesn't mean that the others shouldn't also have copies of that information, but there should be one person who gathers all the documents, gathers all the information about who are the heirs, who are the children, where are the birth certificates, where are the marriage licenses, where are the divorce decrees, somebody who has all the paperwork on what was owned and what debts there are. And once the family kind of agrees on the person who's going to be spearheading it and gathering all the information, the process, I think, becomes easier because now the family can support that person as they work through the process.
It's always a pleasure to have young people on the show sharing their thoughts and perspectives. And one of those individuals this year was the 2019 CNMI Attorney General Cup competition winner, Justin Ocampo. How do you feel going through the preparation process and the actual competition has affected you as a person, either in your opinion about this particular topic or in general?
It's definitely affected my opinion on the topic, because when we first got the topic, people were like, oh, it's are you pro or are you against? But as we started to read more into it, it's
of course the
not really
Humanities
whether or not you're pro
Council
or against,
pays
but
a particular
regardless of your
interest
stance,
to the preservation of
what
Indigenous,
suggestions
Chamorro,
do you
and
have for the
Carolinian
Commonwealth, and,
heritage. And
will
we
this
were fortunate
benefit
to
us
have
or will
Donald
this hurt
Mendiola
us? So
sharing
I
about
used to be
traditional
someone who
Chamorro
used
and
to have like a
Carolinian
very
medicine
kind of like
and
hands-off
his
stance on
roots
marijuana.
in becoming a
you wanna
leader
do it,
in cultural
good for
heritage
you.
preservation.
But now that I know all this neuroscience research about it, I'm a bit more, I guess, someone who wants the people in charge to have more of a hands-on stance on marijuana, at least get involved, at least know the side effects, and not just consider all the good things like they actually have.
Did you know that you can donate up to $5,000 to the Humanities Council through the CNMI Education Tax Credit Program? Donations from individuals and corporations qualify and can be used to offset your local wage and salary tax, BGRT, and earnings tax. Call our office at 235-4785 to see how you can support humanities programs in our community and obtain a tax credit for your donation. Sizuus Maasi, Olomai, and thank you.
Welcome back to your Humanities Half Hour. We're listening to some of the highlights from our shows this year. And in this half of the show, we want to hear from some of our recipients of the Governor's Humanities Award, either from prior years or this year that we interviewed this year. Our first guest is Gordon Marciano, sharing his thoughts on what more we can do to help preserve traditional cultural practices in our islands. I want to ask, in your opinion, what are the major challenges being faced by the preservation of our cultures today, and what recommendations do you have to overcome those challenges based on your experience?
Wow, you're going to get me in trouble for this. To be honest, Kat, it hurts at times, because you know that it works. We know that it works for our people. One good example would be Chamolini Cultural Village Inc. 5 years on the run, running this show. We're pumping in $250,000 a year into that village. And to just see it close, it was sad. If a program is under our organizations and NPOs, and it's helping our community grow, and it's helping the preservation and promoting it, come on and try to sit with them and make it work, rather than to just say, hey, no, it's done, it's finished. No, I'm glad that I'm surrounded with people that just share the same passion and the love and the preservation of protecting our culture, because I see in all of them not wanting to give up. Although we face a lot of challenges, we always know that there's somebody out there listening, and continue and carry on.
One of the things we like to do on our show is give our guests an opportunity to talk about the things that are important to them, not just what we planned the show to be about. And our Governor's Humanities recipient, Cecilio Raikilipi, wanted to talk about the importance of language preservation. For a lot of us, like, English is okay, it covers everything. Why is it important that we use these like gender words and relationship words, the types of language? What is the value of that, you feel?
Menlegi ay chairman kamaliar we ngerebior fitigogo ngesemul bo ay kepasakan we urwoli metai boyor togenam. So if you use English words and then you're doing a during a dispute. English words will just, explain a little bit part of the dispute. But if you use Carolinian language, there's a lot of way that explains that there's no words in English that we can translate to. Yeah. So, just for example, if there's a dispute on a land, okay, among Carolinian, and then they'll bring people that know the history of the land, how the land passed down, from who. Because we have different, even land, we have so many ways of land ownership. The land could be a clan land, or it could be a land that was given, or a land that should go back to the clan, another clan.
And
so you cannot explain that in English to go back to the history of that, and also the way to make the peace among the community.
Always an inspirational guest to have, Galvin De Leon Guerrero was honored for his work in dramatizing the stories contained in the book We Drank Our Tears about local Manamco who survived World War II. We don't have a lot of resources, film resources, about our stories in the Marianas, so it's really great that you've undertaken this. Why did you choose to tell this story in particular instead of some ancient legends, which I'm sure you could have told as equally well, or even a modern documentary? Why this story? Why these stories?
Wow, that's a good question. Well, I think one of the reasons is when you watch movies about war, they're almost always from the perspective of soldiers. And in fact, almost all the films about the war in the Pacific, almost all of them, especially the big ones, they're told from the perspective of the soldier. Flags of Our Fathers, Iwo Jima, all these stories are from the perspective of soldiers. And it's not to say that that perspective is not a valid perspective, but here in the Marianas, we have, it's unique because the people didn't ask for the war to come here, right? I mean, they had lived through centuries of colonization, right? And then all of a sudden this war comes to their shores, and it's just baffling. And I don't know, I felt it was a story that needed to be told, the equipment. So, having the equipment is really a big part of it. And then we just take the time to train the students involved in how to use the gear. And once you have that, once you have the equipment and the gear, and the people that are trained in the gear, then you just have to figure out the look, right? Like you were saying, just get creative.
Victor Cabrera was awarded for his work in agriculture as outstanding teacher in the classroom. What is actually your vision? If you could have it your way, what would you like to see your class and your program do? Of course, we always think about funding, and now you're in a temporary location. What is your dream?
Well, my dream, actually for the past 5 years now, is with these young minds that come into my class, is just to build the awareness. Make them understand that we're currently importing 90% of our produce and our goods. And that's very scary. Just a few months ago, or I guess it was right before Super Typhoon Yutu, we had an egg shortage where, people were going to the store and there were no eggs in any store.
I remember that.
Right. So, I use that as an example. And I tell them, I go, guys, I haven't bought eggs for the past 8 years now. So I didn't even know that there was a shortage.
Wait, how much is that? $3 a dozen times 8 years?
Exactly, yeah. Wow. That's a lot. It's a lot. And no, it's not free. It's not free. I do buy chicken feed. I do give them other foods like fresh cut grass trimmings when I'm done bush cutting. I toss that in. I'll toss in my leftover fruits or melon peels, all of that stuff. So yeah, the whole idea is to just build that awareness, because they're only in the 8th grade right now. As much as I would love to have them become future farmers of the CNMI, that's a far-fetched dream that I think I might be overreaching on. So I just tone it back just a little bit. As long as they understand that, being self-sufficient or self-sustaining in a small way is really helpful. If you have a little kangkung patch in the backyard along with your green onions, those are 2 things that you won't have to buy at the grocery store anymore. If you had 2 hens and, you're a family of 4, you get 2 eggs a day. And in 4 days, you have 8 eggs. I believe everybody can get an omelet. So, if you can just create that awareness and have them realize that it is possible.
Another outstanding teacher in the classroom was Dr. Chaz Algier.
I think you can push kids. Kids are smart. What's the difference between, like, say, high school kids and college kids is really prefrontal cortex development. In other words, as you age, your prefrontal cortex develops its maturity. Now they're guessing now the prefrontal cortex maybe finishes off at around age 30.
What? I thought it was 25.
Even in the 20s, people are still making those kind of irrational bad decisions driven by emotion.
It's only a phase. It's only a phase.
You'll grow out of it. But in terms of like knowledge and the ability to learn new things, the ability to learn, say, college-level writing skills, that's present for everyone. You can take that at a very young age. I think when kids are really sharp, they might want to consider skipping high school, going right into college, going into a community college, if they have the ability and the maturity level to deal with it. I think education shouldn't hold kids back. I think education should promote kids and push them forward.
This year, we also were honored to welcome the chairman of the National Endowment for the Humanities, Jon Peede. Now that you've had an opportunity to see Guam and the Marianas in person, tell us how small councils like ours fit into the larger picture of the NEH. Most people in America don't know we exist. Are our stories important overall to what the NEH is trying to accomplish?
The stories this council is bringing forward aren't just important, they're essential. I think that that you can't tell the story of a nation without telling thousands of stories together. And you can't tell the story of a nation without telling the story of the commonwealths, the territories, that in this particular case, define the outer edges of this. And if I want to understand what my identity is as an American, I need to include those territories, those commonwealths. It seems to me that any properly understood national identity has to be elastic and has to know that the experience of somebody in New England is very different from somebody one generation into a life in California, for example. And the ambition of the National Endowment for the Humanities is to fund and to speak to all of them. I go back to the founding legislation of our agency in 1965, and it says, democracy demands wisdom and vision in its citizens. And I love that. And by the way, it doesn't just say, in fact, it doesn't say at all, rather, wisdom and vision in our elected officials, just our elected officials. It says in each of us. It calls us to engage citizenship. And something that is really, I think, increasingly an anchor of my chairmanship is this idea of engaged citizenship, as the idea that we can't, particularly when I think of our young people, we can't say that you have all these rights living in a representative democracy without telling them also here are the responsibilities of living in a democracy. And so I think we owe them that. And again, all that was so well framed that democracy is inherently linked with wisdom. And it's inherently linked with having a vision. And that responsibility resides in each of us. And so for me, that's very powerful.
We've been listening to some of the highlights from our many shows this year. We hope that you've enjoyed our presentation today. And if you would like to hear any of these shows, please subscribe to our YouTube channel for the Northern Marianas Humanities Council. You can catch all the shows from this year and some from prior years. Or you can contact us on Facebook at 670 Humanities. Wishing you all a Happy New Year. This has been your Humanities Half Hour. I'm Catherine Perry.
This program was supported by a We the People grant awarded to the Northern Marianas Humanities Council from the National Endowment for the Humanities. Any views, findings, conclusions, or recommendations expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily represent those of the National Endowment for the Humanities or the Northern Marianas Humanities Council.